It started with heat, literal heat. The kind that sticks to your skin and makes everything feel too close, too damp. It was late July, the kind of day where the sun punishes the pavement and the only escape is inside, under a cold stream of water. I just finished a jog around the neighborhood, sweat clinging to my shirt like a second skin. My mom was out, as usual, something about another weekend retreat for work. That left me alone with Mark. Mark, my stepfather, the man my mother married 2 years ago, after a short whirlwind romance that never quite made sense to me. He was younger than her, by at least 10 years, and built like someone who spent more time in gyms than boardrooms. His charm was disarming, the kind that makes waiters laugh too long and neighbors peek through curtains. And me? I was 19, on break from college, crashing in my old room for the summer and trying not to notice the way Mark's eyes lingered just a little too long. I told myself it was my imagination, that maybe Mark was just friendly, polite. Maybe he looked at everyone that way. But part of me knew better. The way he smiled when we crossed paths in the hallway. The way his gaze lowered briefly, then snapped back up like he was trying not to get caught. It wasn't overt, not yet, but something about it lingered. Heavy. Unspoken. I turned the shower on and let the bathroom fill with steam, stripping down and stepping under the water. The cold hit my spine, then melted into something tolerable. I closed my eyes, letting the sound drown out everything else. My breathing slowed. I didn't lock the door. I never locked it. It didn't matter. Mom was gone, and Mark had always respected boundaries. Or so I thought. When I opened my eyes, the bathroom door was open 2 inches. Enough for air to move. Enough to see. I froze. Through the gap, I saw him. Mark. He stood there, motionless. Silent. His hand rested on the doorframe like he'd just leaned into it casually. But there was nothing casual about the look in his eyes. They were locked on me. Not my face, not my eyes, but lower. He was watching. Not like a father. Not like a friend. His mouth was slightly parted, breath shallow. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't move. Couldn't. I was too stunned, too aware of everything. My body, the water sliding down my chest, the way his gaze burned like it could see through the frosted glass. 100 things flashed through my mind. Shame, curiosity, fear, arousal. I didn't know which to listen to. I expected him to turn and walk away. Apologize. Say it was a mistake. But he didn't. He just stood there, watching. And then, slowly, deliberately, he met my eyes. The moment hung between us like suspended breath. It was bold, unblinking. I saw no fear in him, no guilt. Just desire. Then, quietly, he stepped back. The door closed with a soft click. I stood there, the water turning lukewarm, unsure if I should feel violated or wanted. No words had been spoken, but everything had changed. That single look carried more weight than anything I'd ever experienced. My stepfather had watched me, really watched me, and I hadn't stopped him. I dried off slowly, deliberately, trying to make sense of it. My hands trembled slightly as I wrapped the towel around my waist. I couldn't shake the look in his eyes, hungry, restrained. It made something inside me stir that I didn't want to name. Back in my room, I lay on the bed, damp and restless. The ceiling fan whirred above me, but it didn't help. My skin still burned, not from the heat, but from something else. The way he looked at me like I was something forbidden, something he wanted. And the worst part? I wanted it too. I hated myself for it. This was wrong. He was married to my mother. He was supposed to be off limits. But the line that once existed between us had shifted, cracked. Maybe it was always fragile, and I just hadn't seen it until now. Or maybe he'd been waiting for the right moment to test it. I heard the soft thud of his footsteps outside my room an hour later. He didn't knock, didn't say anything, just paused, and moved on. He knew I knew, and I knew he knew. That silence, thick, charged, was the start of something. Something I couldn't take back. I closed my eyes and replayed the moment over and over again. The door. The look. The silence. That was the bath I shouldn't have taken. The bath that turned a safe home into something dangerous. And somehow, I didn't feel afraid. I felt alive. For the next few days, the house became a breathing thing. Every wall pulsed with tension. Every hallway felt tighter. It wasn't just in my head. Mark knew what he did. And I hadn't told anyone, not even myself, what I wanted to do about it. We didn't speak about the bathroom. Not directly. But everything else spoke in its place. On Monday morning, I came downstairs to find him shirtless in the kitchen, sipping coffee, leaning against the counter like it was a casual photo shoot. His gray sweats hung low on his hips. His chest was taut, tan, just glistening enough from the heat to be distracting. "Morning," he said. His voice was too calm. Too casual. I nodded. My mouth dry. "Morning." He poured me coffee without asking. Black, exactly how I liked it. A small gesture, but it told me he paid attention. More than a stepfather should. We sat at the kitchen table in silence. I pretended to read something on my phone. He pretended not to watch me do it. Every second stretched long and slow. My skin prickled under his gaze. "You going for another run today?" he asked, voice smooth. "Maybe later," I replied. "You should," he said, smiling. "Keeps you looking good." There it was. The slip. The shift. A compliment that wasn't neutral. A man who was no longer pretending. That afternoon, I didn't go running. Instead, I lingered. In the living room. In the kitchen. Wherever Mark was, I stayed longer than I should have. I was testing him. Testing myself. At one point, we passed in the narrow hallway upstairs. Our arms brushed. Just a graze of skin. It wasn't much. But it made me stop breathing. "Sorry," I said quickly. He leaned in slightly. His breath close to my ear. "Don't be." I turned to look at him, unsure of what he was doing, what I was allowing. But the answer was clear in his expression. No shame. Just heat. The silence between us became its own language. Glances stretched too long. His hand brushing mine when we passed something. His voice dropping lower when we were alone. He was careful when my mother was home, quick to leave a room to avoid eye contact, but when it was just us, he drifted closer. I didn't push him away. It came to a head late one night. I couldn't sleep. The heat outside was unbearable. I stepped into the living room, shirtless, hoping for a breeze near the open window. Mark was already there, sprawled on the couch in boxers and a tank top, watching some old movie on mute. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, eyes scanning me with no attempt to hide it. "Too hot." He gestured to the spot beside him. "Come sit. Cooler down here." I hesitated, then moved toward him, sitting just close enough to share the fan but not touching. We stared at the screen, both pretending to care about the movie. But our bodies were too aware. After a while, I felt it, his thigh brushing mine. Not an accident. His skin was warm. Solid. I didn't move. His hand followed, resting gently on my knee. Then a slow glide up my thigh. My heart thundered in my chest. I turned my head toward him, meeting his gaze in the dark. No words. Just want. His hand tightened slightly, possessive. "Tell me to stop," he said. I didn't. Instead, I whispered, "What are we doing?" Mark leaned in, his lips barely an inch from mine. "We've already started." The kiss didn't come then, not yet. But the charge in the air was undeniable. He didn't push further. Just held that space. Intimate. Dangerous. It was an acknowledgement. We were both crossing a line we couldn't uncross. Then he pulled his hand away. Slowly. Respectfully. But the imprint of it remained like heat after a flame. "I should sleep," I said, unsure whether I meant it. He nodded. "Me too." I stood, legs shaky, and started toward the hallway. His voice followed me. "You looked beautiful that night. In the bath." I stopped. My body stiffened. I didn't turn around. "I wanted to say it before," he continued, "but I knew I shouldn't. Doesn't change that I meant it." I couldn't speak. I walked away, heart pounding like a war drum. In my room, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His words echoed in my head. Beautiful. No one had ever called me that, not like that. Not with hunger behind it. We hadn't kissed. We hadn't touched again. But something had broken wide open between us. The space between stepfather and stepson had collapsed, and neither of us seemed willing to rebuild it. It happened on a night the sky seemed ready to split open. A thunderstorm had rolled in without warning, wind shaking the windows, rain lashing the glass like something wild. I was in bed, half asleep, trying to ignore the flicker of lightning across my ceiling. The air felt heavy, wet with tension. My body couldn't forget the way Mark's hand had felt days earlier, lingering on my thigh like a question he already knew the answer to. Then came the knock. 3 soft taps. Hesitant, almost unsure. I opened the door. Mark stood in the hallway, shirtless, sweatpants slung low on his hip. His chest rose and fell with careful restraint, like he'd practiced what he was about to say. But when he spoke, his voice betrayed him. Low, hoarse, vulnerable. "Power's out," he said, eyes flickering down the hall. "Storm's worse than they said. Thought maybe you'd want to come lie down in my room. Just until it passes." It was a lie, thinly veiled. But I followed him. His room was lit by a single candle. The flame danced on the dresser, casting flickering shadows across the bed, the walls, his body. I stepped in slowly, hyper-aware of every movement. The door shut behind me with a dull click. "You scared of storms?" I asked, standing awkwardly near the foot of the bed. He smiled faintly, eyes locked on mine. "Not the kind outside." I didn't answer. I just moved toward the bed, settling on top of the covers. He lay down beside me, the space between us charged. Our shoulders almost touched, heat radiating in the few inches of distance we hadn't crossed, yet. For a moment neither of us spoke. The candle crackled. Thunder grumbled in the distance. Then Mark turned his head toward me. His voice was softer now. "I haven't been able to stop thinking about you." I swallowed. "Since when?" He didn't blink. "Since the first time I saw you look at me like that." I felt my breath catch. "Like what?" "Like you wanted me to look back." It was bold, honest, and terrifying. I didn't deny it. I turned onto my side, facing him fully now. Our faces inches apart. I studied his features, the sharp line of his jaw, the tension in his lips, the flicker of restraint in his eyes. There was desire there, yes, but also guilt, and something else I hadn't expected. Longing. He reached out, slowly, giving me time to stop him. His fingers brushed my cheek, then slid into my hair. I closed my eyes as his forehead pressed to mine. "Tell me to stop," he whispered again. I didn't. Instead, I tilted my head. Met his mouth with mine. The kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't clumsy. It was deliberate, deep, like we'd both waited too long and needed to remember it one detail at a time. His lips moved over mine with quiet hunger, tasting, claiming. I felt his hand slide down my back, pulling me closer until there was no space left to pretend between us. His body pressed against mine, firm, warm, trembling just enough to betray how much he wanted this too. The candlelight caught the muscles in his arms as he shifted above me. Our breath synced, shallow and sharp, bodies communicating what words could no longer hold. He paused, forehead resting against mine. "I've wanted this longer than I should admit." My fingers traced his bare spine, my voice barely audible. "Then don't stop." What happened next didn't need narration. It lived in movement, breath, and skin. His hands were everywhere, reverent and urgent. I gave in completely, wrapped in the warmth of his body and the quiet truth we could no longer deny. The bed creaked beneath us, matching the rhythm of our need. No words. Just shared electricity. We didn't rush. Every touch felt deliberate, a slow unraveling of restraint. I let myself get lost in him. In the way he whispered my name. In the way he looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered in that moment. After, we lay tangled together beneath the sheets, the candle still burning beside us, shadows dancing like secrets on the walls. I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. He kissed my hair. "I'm sorry." "For what?" I asked, not lifting my head. "For not stopping." I finally looked up. "I wouldn't have let you." He exhaled, eyes soft. "This wasn't supposed to happen." But it did. A silence settled between us, not awkward, not ashamed. Just full. Heavy with meaning. He didn't move. Neither did I. The storm outside had begun to quiet, but inside the room, something irreversible had already taken place. This wasn't just about desire. This wasn't just about forbidden tension. It was about two people, two men, who had crossed into a space they weren't supposed to enter. But now that we were inside it, neither of us wanted to leave. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of his body wash over me. It was the first time I felt truly seen. Not as a boy. Not as a son. As something more. And I wasn't ready to let that go. Morning light spilled through the blinds like a slow confession. It warmed the sheets, our tangled limbs, and the space between our breathing. I woke first. Mark's arm was draped across my waist, fingers curled gently against my bare stomach, like even in sleep he didn't want to let go. I didn't move right away. I just lay there, still, listening to the quiet hum of the house. The storm was gone. And with it, the protective cover of night. This was the part no one talked about. After. I looked at him, his face soft in sleep, brow no longer furrowed, mouth slightly parted like he'd finally let himself rest. He looked nothing like the man my mother married. And yet, this version of him felt more real. More intimate. But the weight in my chest wasn't gentle. It was sharp. Real. This was a secret now. A living, breathing secret. I slipped out of bed carefully, my skin still aching with the memory of him. I grabbed my shirt off the floor and moved toward the door barefoot. I didn't look back. Not because I didn't want to, but because if I did, I wouldn't leave. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of my bed, heart hammering. My fingers trembled slightly. Part of me wanted to cry. Not from regret. From confusion. Because it hadn't felt wrong. It had felt necessary. I heard the soft thud of footsteps an hour later. Mark didn't knock. He opened the door slowly and stood there, wearing the same sweatpants from the night before, shirtless again, but this time his body looked tense, stiff. "We need to talk," he said. I nodded. He closed the door behind him and sat beside me, the bed creaking under his weight. "This can't happen again," he said. I didn't answer. "I mean it," he added. "Last night, it was a mistake. One we can't repeat." I turned to him. "Did it feel like a mistake to you?" He looked at me then, really looked. "No. That's the problem." Silence pressed in. "I've never felt something like that," he admitted. "Not with anyone. Not even your mom. And that scares me." My throat tightened. "So what now? We just pretend it didn't happen." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, rubbing his face like he could scrub the guilt out. "I don't know. But we can't keep doing this. It'll destroy everything." "You mean her." "I mean you," he said sharply, turning toward me. "I care about you. I shouldn't. Not like this. But I do. And if this gets out, it won't just be my marriage that ends. It'll tear you apart too." I stood, needing space, needing air. "So what do we do, Mark?" He stood too. "We stop. We bury it. We act like it didn't happen. That's the only way forward." "Is it?" I asked, eyes locking with his. "Because last night didn't feel like something I want to bury." The air between us thickened. His jaw clenched. "I want you," he said finally. "God help me, I do. But I can't have you. Not without destroying everything else." I didn't cry. I wanted to. But I didn't. Instead, I nodded. And just like that, it ended. Or so I thought. The days that followed were colder. Not in weather, but in how we moved through the house. We barely spoke. When we did, it was short, clipped. No more long glances. No accidental touches. We went back to pretending. But it hurt more now because we knew. One afternoon, I came downstairs to find him in the garage, working under the hood of his car, sweat dripping down his temple. He didn't hear me at first. I watched him for a moment, his hands, his focus, the tension in his shoulders. "You okay?" I asked. He straightened slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. "You shouldn't be here. I live here." He didn't laugh, just stared. "It's getting harder. To avoid me? To not touch you." I swallowed hard. "Then maybe we stop avoiding it." He shook his head. Don't make this harder than it already is. You kissed me first. And I'll regret it every day for the rest of my life." I walked closer. Close enough to smell the sweat on his neck, the grease on his fingers. "But you'll remember it too." He turned his back to me. "I already do. I left the garage before I did something reckless. Again." That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan. Everything in me ached. Not just for him, but for clarity. For an answer that didn't exist. Mark was still with my mother. Still smiling through dinners. Still pretending nothing had changed. But in the quiet moments, when our eyes met in passing, the truth screamed louder than ever. We were living in the silence between choices. And neither of us had the strength to make one. Not yet.